Our first speaker is Annette Foster, who graduated in '74. She was here about the same time I was. And she is now a private consultant, I guess is the right way to say it. But she's going to talk to us a bit about what's been going on in implementing technology.
All right. So it's an honor to be here to speak to y'all. I am a practitioner, not a researcher, and the items in my talk are things from observations from my career. Let's see if I can use the technology. So I have spent 40 years in this field, and I've spent most of it in implementing technology in businesses. And the question that I'm always asking is, are we delivering the business value from the technology in a timely and efficient manner? There are two experiences that I had in my career that shaped a lot of the thoughts in this talk. So the first one was that in 1999 I went to a bleeding edge e-commerce startup firm. They had written a platform to write web applications, and so many customers asked them to write e-commerce applications that they said, hey, let's create some packages. That evolved into 12 B2B e-commerce modules that deeply integrated to enterprise systems such as SAP and JD Edwards, using their business rules and very significantly their pricing modules. I was the director of professional services, so I was in charge of all the implementations in the client companies. So we had teams, we went out and did implementations. The fastest one we ever did was 15 days. And like clockwork, we delivered implementations of usually 2 to sometimes 3 modules in 3 to 4 months' time. We had repeated success over and over, and the model that I'm going to share with you in the talk comes from that experience. Our goal, very clearly stated by our management, was great references. We absolutely had to deliver the business value that the customer wanted from the system. And our motivation was stock options. We were going to be fabulously wealthy, which would have enabled me to make a giant contribution to the Toolsmith Fund, but unfortunately that did not happen. That's another talk. In contrast to that 4-year experience, what I see going on out in the world is that projects take way too long and the outcome is less than optimal in delivering the business value. I think we've created some of these problems, and the good news is I think we can fix some of them. These are the problems we're going to talk about. The first one is IT folks don't know the business. I go to about 3 or 4 professional associations in this area, and over the CIOs and the CTOs talk about that the success for an implementation project is folks understanding the business. Over and over and over again, I hear from all my IT friends and colleagues that they are not interested in the business. The number I originally had on this slide was 95 to 98%. I thought I'd cut them a little slack. They all say they love the technology. So I want you to think about something. Let's say you were sick, very sick, and you went to a doctor. Would you entrust yourself to a doctor who was enthralled with the treatments that he was giving you, but he didn't care if you got well? That's what we're doing. It's interesting to me where technology and business intersect is what excites me about this profession. And it's fascinating to me that people don't seem to understand that technology does not exist for itself. It's there to solve a problem. And in the type of work that I do, we're not creating technology, we're usually creating a business process that is supported by the technology. I think understanding the business results in better things throughout the project. So I was a project manager and analyst on a project to create a web application for the Veterans Administration to present preventive medicine information to veterans. So a veteran would go online, you'd put in your age and your gender and a little bit of demographic information, and up would pop this list of things that you might want to be doing for wellness and things that would be good for you to talk to your doctor about in your next yearly physical. I thought that this was a business model that was pretty easy for a layman to understand. So the developer who was working, one of the developers on the project, very bright guy, great developer, great designer. He could care less about the business. Even as simple as this was to understand, he didn't want to think about it. Over and over, I saw him make small decisions on things he would choose to display or not display on the screen, or where he would put them. And he actually made some significant bad decisions in the architecture of the system and in something that I just forgot. Anyway, something. And when I would try to correct these, he would, if he wouldn't do it when I said to do it, when we had a focus group with the users, they would make him change them. Okay. At the e-commerce firm, the vice president would come down to our professional services group once a quarter, explain the goals of the startup company, exactly where we were going, and explain the significance of each of the implementations we were doing in the client sites. This was very motivating and really made us want to understand not only our own business, but their businesses. Unfortunately, I don't see anything being done. The CIOs and the CTOs are saying this is incredibly important. I don't see anything or hear about anything being done on this, and I'm interested to hear if y'all have ideas on that. From a project standpoint, however, you can understand the business. And the way that we did this was by having a discovery workshop to start each project and using an Agile method that I'll describe to you. Okay. The discovery workshop. You put all the project stakeholders in the room, from the highest level executive down to the lowest level clerk, plus all the IT people on the project. You put them in a room for a day and you gather business requirements. So we did a project with an apparel firm in Florida that had a uniform division. So if you happen to be a business and you require your employees to wear uniforms, you may use one of these two systems. An allotment is that you say, in a year I'm going to give you 2 shirts, a belt, and a pant for your uniform, or I'm going to give you an entitlement. So I'm going to give you $200, and you get to purchase whatever part of your uniform you need over that year at wholesale prices. And typically, the firm tracked that by itself, usually by hand. Some guy in purchasing collated the order together, placed a big order, and then somebody had to dole it out to everybody when it arrived. So the president comes into the discovery workshop, and he comes in, and there's a lot of salespeople in the workshop, and he says, cut off your cell phones, shut your laptops. This is the most important work you will do of any day this entire year. And he said, our biggest competitor has developed a web application to take the orders for allotments and entitlements, where they completely take over the management of that system for their customers, and they do it online. They had taken 25% market share from this company in the last 6 months. And he said, if we don't get this done, we will be out of business in the next year. So we developed a project goal to have an implementation of a web application for this, and we're bopping along defining these things that I have on here. And I'm always saying, please, people, tell me about the risks. Don't worry, it isn't being a team player. What can go wrong? So I put up the team slide, and there was a developer who was there. He was out of college by 6 months, and he was just out of college, and he'd been with the company for 6 weeks. He was very shy. He terrifiedly holds up his hand, and he says, I see myself on the team slide as a Java developer. He goes, I don't know Java. So the other thing I should back up and say, we created a project goal that said we would have this implemented, the president told us to do this, by the first week of December for the largest trade show in the industry for them to show. It was currently the first week of September. So we're bopping along. The next few hours of the workshop, you're designing the new business process and the technology. So about 3 hours into this design, this same fella holds up his hand and he goes, I need to ask you a question. And I said, okay. And he says, now if I'm understanding correctly, we bought an e-commerce module from you, and you're going to use the data and the pricing and the business rules that are in the entitlement and allotment system that my company is writing. And I said, that is correct. And he said, that system will not go live until December 15th. And I went, oh. So while we were in the workshop, 3 vice presidents huddled in the back and figured out how to pull that go live back by 2 weeks so we could make this deadline. So I've been doing these workshops. I will not take on a project if I'm not allowed to do a discovery workshop for it. I've been doing it since 1999 and it's never failed to give a tremendous result. That's the beginning of, there is an Agile method specifically for business implementation. So you do your discovery workshop, you get about 80% of the business requirements and you put them in giant, and you group them together in business functions. You select one to be first, a comprehensive business function, and you go away and develop that on the first iteration. That iteration lasts anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, whatever the estimate says that it is. You present that live code to a focus group. The focus group consists of everyone in the discovery workshop, plus in this case, the outside customers were invited to see it. You get changes out of the workshop, out of the focus group. Then you take those changes and you take your second group of, your second business functionality piece and do a second iteration and go through the process. You can have anywhere from 1 to 4 iterations and the project should be, the sweet spot's 3 to 6 months. If it's longer than 9 months, you need to break it into 2 separate projects. The other thing that we did that was very effective was we estimated by business function, not by IT construct, and we would present the estimates to the business people and they would simply pick and choose what they wanted to afford in time and money. So now we're going to talk about teams, how teams have changed over time. Back in the beginning of my career, I had the opportunity once or twice to write a complete system, just me. I was the team. And if we remember what we learned in school, adding more men then lengthens, not shortens the schedule. I often ask myself, is not the team of one of the most efficient teams that you can have? And I think the best part about it was one person was resolving the discrepancies and the disputes. This is no longer realistic. Technology is much more sophisticated, complex, etc. So a typical implementation team in a business has all the team members that are listed over there, and unfortunately now has these characteristics on the left that we're going to talk about. One of my colleagues says she thinks this is actually the biggest problem she has in implementations is not dedicated team members. So when you have a team, you go, okay, I'd like to get this person to be my developer full time. And the answer comes back, no, you can't have him 100%, but instead I'll give you 2 people half time. So Weinberg proposes that you only get 40% out of that half-time person because they'll spend 20% of their time flipping between projects, and it goes up and up as there are more projects. Each person is less productive. Don't ask me how to get rid of that thing. It increases the team size, and what does that do? It slows down the project. So try to change the culture. Try a pilot in your organization to see if you can actually do the work faster. The second story that I'm going to tell you is about business process reengineering. So I worked for Duke University and we were doing business process reengineering. If you have ever automated something that was convoluted or crazy, business process reengineering is nirvana, because before you automate, you look at the process and you change it to be new and streamlined and up to date and doing exactly what you want it to do, and then you automate it. So at Duke, we were automating purchasing. This was the purchasing sequence, and it could take up to 67 days to order some goods and services at Duke. Business process reengineering has a methodology. Step 1 is to study the current process in incredible detail and identify the places with your problems and your delays. Exactly where did those 67 days go? The first place you're supposed to look where you will find, over 50% of your problems is the handoff from one department to another or one person to another. And they call the departments silos. Guess what? Implementing technology in a business is a process. And with the specialists that we now have, we have created silos. And I'm here to tell you, in my 40 years of experience, I believe that the miscommunications, the problems, the omissions, etc., come in the handoffs from one person to the next. Another thing that's very startling to me is that there's incredible specialization of roles. So many people I talk to, whatever role they're in, that's the only role they ever want to do. So developers never want to do analysis, and just as an aside, they never want to test. Business analysts never want to be, God forbid, a project manager. And then I've met project managers who've never even been in information technology. I don't know how they manage when they don't actually have any clue what everybody else is doing. So there's less evolution or promotion from one role to the next. So they've lost the knowledge of what the other team members are doing. I think the really, really sad thing about this is, to me though, they've significantly limited their career path. Anyway, it increases the team size, it slows down the project. When you're hiring, can you look for people who have experience in greater than one role? Can you encourage them to learn greater than one role? So at the e-commerce firm, my boss came to me and said, we have made a ton of new sales and we're going to have all this implementation work. In the next 3 months, take literally anybody you think is capable and train them to be a project manager. So over the next 3 months, I trained 2 developers and 3 SAP specialists to be project managers on site at their client, mentoring them through their first project management role. And as a personal favorite, make everybody on the team test. I think as soon as everybody tests, they will each do their roles better because they'll see the problems they create. Okay. What did I just do there? I went backwards. All right, sorry about that. Okay. Business process reengineering. After we did the reengineering, we had the implementation team. We asked for this one guy from purchasing to be on the team 100%. And they came back and said, no, we'll give you 3 or 4 people a day, a week. And part of it was political. We want to spread the knowledge of the new way among more people, to have more people to train, but the reality is they also were against the reengineering and they wanted to slow us down, which it did. When you have a really, really large team, you can think about breaking the large team into sub-teams by business function, which is what we did on that implementation. And you can have a core team and an extended team. So if the users are part-time, maybe at least the core technology people are full-time. It's a big corporate pressure to get projects started. So they have on the list that they want to do something significant in the corporation, and they don't want to hear, well, let us finish stuff and start that in 3 or 4 months. And so I see so many people start more and more projects, so there's more and more going on simultaneously. Other industries are recognizing sooner than we are that you're just going to slow all of the projects down. So at this one Air Force base, the consultants came in. All they recommended was cutting in half the number of planes being repaired at the time. And in the next year, they were back to running a good cycle. So to summarize, ideally you have smaller projects, fewer simultaneous projects, small, dedicated, motivated teams, and use discovery workshops and Agile for business implementation to deliver the desired business value. So I'm fascinated to hear what any of y'all have to say about whether you've seen some of this or have some things you've fixed, maybe. Ooh.
Questions or comments for Annette?
None of us are business people. We just like the software. We don't care about that.
That's it. You don't care. Yes.
Have you read Andy Hunt's from the Pragmatic Programmers series? He had one on programming your wetware, and a lot of that has the performance is to minimize the context switching on a daily level, on an hourly level, etc. And that context. So I think what you were saying earlier about the context switching of multiple projects, multiple people on the, you know, instead of one person, you had 3 people,
Yes.
and their context switching. That book said a whole lot about that. You may want to.
Okay.
I can loan you my copy.
Super.
Saw some hands back there.
Okay, yes?
Yes, two things. One is a comment. You were talking about executives coming down and giving their pitch about how important the product is. Very similar to a methodology that came out of Carnegie Mellon University, the Software Engineering Institute, called Team Software Process. And that's a basic technology, software technology that's used, particularly in the DoD context, but more likely in the government context. It's been proven to be a very effective way.
Okay.
The second thing is, have you ever heard of software inspections?
Software inspections.
Software inspections are a methodology that came out of IBM in the late 70s already.
Okay.
Static testing, or where people actually look at code or requirements documents, and it's a good way to pass around the technology, all right, so that you get people that can be in different models of roles and so forth. I
Okay.
use it on
Is
projects.
that like a code review or something different?
It's a metrics-based code review. That's what it
Ooh,
comes down to. You
okay.
keep data, and all right, so you see how good your process is, not only the inspection, but the development process. You know how much your defect density is, how many defects per 1,000 lines of code, or
Okay.
how many pages, defects per pages of requirements. It's a very powerful technology.
Wow, that's cool.
In combination with testing, it can bring up basically your defect detection rate up to about 97%,
Okay.
which means you're only shipping 3%.
Ooh. Have you all ever heard of a discovery workshop or a construct like that? Where did it come from? I've learned it and I use it and I don't know where it came from. Possibly IBM, maybe in the 80s or something? Don't know.
Nah, I doubt it.
Doubt it.
Can we assume you've already Googled it? So
Yes, I have Googled it to know, they may have called it something different wherever it originated. So, yes?
Actually, the organization that was the first one that I know of that actually brought people together was GE under Welsh, so it might have come from there.
Ah, okay.
Very similar to the team software process out of the Software Engineering Institute in Pittsburgh, which is associated with Carnegie Mellon University.
Ooh, okay.
I saw a hand back there.
It strikes me that one of the issues in the discovery workshop success would be whether the customer actually understands what he wants. Yeah.
Oh, oh, I'm so glad you asked that. I had a client once was the American Board of Pediatrics, and so I changed all my analogies in my talk to medical ones. One of the things I firmly believe about being an information technology people, especially like being the business analyst, they do not have to know perfectly what they want. They come and they tell you their symptoms and what is their desired outcome, and it is your job to interpret that and put in the technical, but also help them resolve differences among themselves and come out with a better solution than they would by themselves. Yes.
would you be willing to give this presentation at the local Agile RTP?
Sure, sure. Now, this is not the method that 98% of the world is doing.
No, but the dev workshop is something that I think the Agile folks probably need to hear.
Yep.
Okay, that'd be great. Yes?
In a longer term project where you are going to have staff rolling in and out, and you're stuck with it, have you developed methods for transferring ownership of the project from the outgoing front end teams to the back end?
So give me an example of who's rolling in and out.
The examples that we were working with were the training analysts
Yes.
and the teachers on the front end doing requirements definition, and the development staff at the back end.
Okay, so I'm going to say in the pure model that I was using in the e-commerce firm, those of us team members, being myself, the project manager, analysts, developers, et cetera, we would train the users and they would train them. I've done models like you're saying, and I think it's when it's in a bigger team and a larger project, you do knowledge transfer sessions, and I've designed and written some of those for some of the projects I've written on, where you try to do like a mind dump and hand it over to them. It's the best I know. Okay.
There are also tools you can use, a knowledge database that when you have large team and people come in and out, you can have tools to help you capture that.
Yes.
And what I
This
use
is more of an emotional problem than a knowledge problem, in terms of ownership of the project and
Yes.
commitment to success throughout.
Yes.
I was getting to that. And from the emotional standpoint, those who are leaving, if it's not for performance reason that you want to kick them out, actually they're leaving to a better place, meaning that a new project or a new client.
Yes.
And they want to leave quickly. And the problem is that they don't leave enough knowledge for the guys who's going to come and pick it up.
Right.
So we built in a system that the faster you can transfer the knowledge, the faster you can leave.
There's incentive.
They figure out the whole system, and they have a study group, and they'll just get it done.
Yes.
And then there are the
Okay.
companies that had people, training the people so that they could fight again.
That's
So
it.
good.
That's the case for mentoring.
That's right. And I should give kudos to Erwin Danziger for his wonderful systems analysis class a long time ago.